Who is the first school to win an SEC title out of Oklahoma and Texas? They head to the SEC a year early, so 2024 will be when they arrive. This is their last year in the Big 12 Conference, and I've been on Twitter asking this question. I've done different radio hits where we've been asked this question, and I think it's time we just give this an honest assessment, okay? Because both Texas and Oklahoma, two of the premier brands in college football, not just the Big 12 or the SEC, in college football. And so the expectation would be at some point in time, one of these schools is going to win the SEC in the next 100 years, right? Like, I think that is not an unreasonable statement to make. But I don't think the answer is so simple as just Oklahoma or Texas. Like, I don't think it's just a clear answer that we can have. We got to unpack this with some context. And the first thing that I'm looking at when it comes to the context around who could win the SEC first whenever they get there is what happens their last year in the Big 12. What happens this year in 2023? A lot of what I would say with building to what they're going to do in the SEC is about the stability of their operation. Think about, and we've said this many times, think about how you would judge each program if they were to win 6 games. Oklahoma wins 6 games this coming year. Texas wins 6 games this coming year. What's the situation at both schools? We'll start with Texas. If they win 6 games in Steve Sarkisian's 3rd year, that means he went 5-7, then he went 8-4, and then they went 6-6, not counting whatever the bowl game ends up being. That doesn't give me a ton of optimism for a recruit. I'm saying, okay, so you won 6 games in your 3rd year with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, with 10 of 11 starters back on offense. How much longer is Steve Sarkisian staying at Texas? I'm not saying he gets fired. You guys know how I feel about that. I do not believe Steve Sarkisian will be fired this year if they win 6 games. I think that's unreasonable. I think there's a lot of pressure already on him right now. If they won 6 games this year, that pressure would only be increased. But think about from a recruiting standpoint how that would impact Texas. It'd be a lot harder for me as a recruit to buy into the direction of Texas because, again, the stability around the program, I think, would be in a little bit more question. So that's how you would perceive Texas if they were to win 6 games. Now, for Oklahoma, if they were to win 6 games and Brent Venables in his 2nd year does that at Oklahoma, I'm saying, okay, you had 2 years, you won 6 games. Where's this thing going? I don't have a large sample size for Brent Venables as a head coach to where I can just say, yeah, he's done it other places as a head coach. He's won this many games as a head coach. He's never been a head coach before. Last year was his 1st year. And I think we got to give him the benefit of the doubt, to be honest with you, in terms of what happened last year. But if I'm a recruit, again, you're telling me you won 6 games, back-to-back years, headed to the SEC. The level of difficulty is only going to increase here. What am I buying into? What is the direction? What's the stability going on right now at each of these schools? Now, if they were to both win 10 games, I think you look at it in a different way and say, okay, Texas is trending in a positive way. Oklahoma's trending in a positive way. I feel good about buying in. But if one school were to win 6 games, the other were to win 10 games, it just totally changes the way that you look at them in terms of how they're trending when they get to the SEC. You with me? So what happens in 2023 is a very big variable when it comes to their success when they get to the SEC. So we got to use context here, and that's a big point of context that needs to be addressed. The other thing I'm looking at, there is no other position in sports that is more important than quarterback. Mic drop, period, the end. Both these schools, the good news is they've both recruited their quarterback of the future in a Jackson Arnold and an Arch Manning. Both 5-star players, both the future of the program. I mean, I talked to people at Oklahoma. They told me that Jackson Arnold's probably the most talented guy in that quarterback room today, and he's probably not going to start this year. So you feel really good about what you have in-house. Then Arch Manning, I mean, last name Manning, his recruitment was covered by just about anybody and everybody. Like, we all know what we expect from him. Which of these guys pops first, if that makes sense? Like, which of these guys becomes a differentiating factor for their team? Because they've recruited well around both these quarterbacks. For Texas, the hope is that Quinn Ewers plays well enough this year to leave for the NFL, and then Arch Manning is your guy when you get to the SEC. But which guy has the Caleb Williams effect? And that's asking a lot, to be honest with you. I think the question is, do either of these guys have the Caleb Williams effect, where you just trot them out and you know that you are going to have a really good chance to win because of who you have at quarterback? Okay, I think both guys will be good, but what's the level of impact that they both present to you? okay, because you got to have a quarterback to win in college football, especially in the SEC. I mean, look at the teams that made the college football playoff. Max Duggan, Heisman finalist. Stetson Bennett, Heisman finalist. J.J. McCarthy really came on towards the end of the year for Michigan. C.J. Stroud, Heisman finalist. Like, you got to have the quarterback to be able to play at a championship level within the SEC. And I don't think that's a stretch. Look at the SEC the last couple of years. Georgia and Alabama, one of the last 2 years. Bryce Young for Alabama, Stetson Bennett for Georgia. Like, that's kind of a part of the formula here. So which of these guys is able to hit the ground running the quickest, and which is able to have that it factor for you? Because I think they'll both be really, really good, but which ends up having some ROI first, if that makes sense. Again, you feel good about both, but which hits first is my question. So if we're going to use logic here, and I think we should, because that's all we have to go off of right now. You can use emotion, you can use feel, and those have their time and place. But right now, if we're using logic, I think it is difficult to say that Texas shouldn't win the SEC before Oklahoma does. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, you probably just spit out your drink or you threw something at your screen, and that's fine. I mean, I appreciate your passion. But think about it this way. Oklahoma and Brent Venables are pretty early on in terms of their development of their team. I said it a second ago. Brent Venables is going into his second year as a head coach. He's just figuring this out. If you're climbing the mountain, Brent Venables and Oklahoma are just kind of starting their ascent. Texas and Steve Sarkisian, they've been at this thing for a while now. Like when they get to the SEC, they would be going on year 4 for Steve Sarkisian. He's been a head coach before at other institutions. He's had the trial and error. He's had time to get his culture in place. He's had time to develop his roster. Like at Texas, there's some expectation that you start to get it done soon. Not just because of the resources they put into place, not just because of the branding, but because of how long you've been at it. There's the expectation that Texas now will eventually deliver some results. So when you get to the SEC, take the branding away, take the names out of it. I got a year 4 coach who's been at it for a while and been a head coach before, and I got a year 3 coach who's literally going on his 3rd year ever being a head coach. Again, that's when they get to the SEC in 2024. Who would you expect more from? The guy who's been on the job longer or the guy who's just figured it out in his 3rd year? And I'm not dunking on Brent Venables. Heck, I'm buying stock in Oklahoma like it's going out of style. But in terms of who you would expect to win the SEC first, Texas, 1,000% should be your answer based on how long they've been developing. Now, here's the thing I would also say. It's not about who wins the first one. Like, whoever wins the first one, that's great, cool. Take the trophy, put it in the trophy case. It'd be a big deal. You get a medal. I mean, like, that's awesome. Great. It's not about who wins the first one. It's about who is set up to consistently compete for the SEC title. Because you can have a flash in a pan. I mean, I think Missouri in their 1st or 2nd year in the conference, they played for an SEC title. I don't think they've been back since. It's not about 1 year. It's about building your foundation for continued success over time. So for Texas and OU, I'm excited to see what they do. Texas, just based on a product in itself, is further along than Oklahoma. But really, I'm keeping a very close eye on this quarterback spot. Jackson Arnold and Arch Manning, do either of those guys present the Caleb Williams effect, like for USC? Like, you just trot them out there and you know they're going to be your game breaker. They're taking over the game. Do either of those guys have that impact? If it's both of them, then we got a whole other story, and we're going to have a lot of really good games on our hands in the Red River rivalry. But keep an eye on this one. My answer would be Texas, but not because I'm down on Oklahoma. It's because for Texas, at some point in time, it is a show me, right? It is a show me year this year for Texas. It's going to be a let's do something now if we get to the SEC and Steve Sarkisian has had some good things in 2023. All right? Golly, that's going to be a whole lot of fun. Do you realize what's going to happen in 2024? USC and UCLA to the Big Ten, Texas and OU to the SEC. The college football playoff gets expanded. Y'all got your way, or the playoff is expanding. I'm not for it, but that's no. I'm gonna be excited about it. I'm gonna watch every game. You better believe it. But 2024 is gonna be a year for the books for college football. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.